All right, in the first video about footprinting with DNS, we did a cursory glance, a basic understanding of DNS, some information we can quickly get with Who.is. There's actually many sites associated with a Who.is and looking up DNS servers. I just happened to pick that one. There is some built-in commands with Kali. Now what I want to do is using those particular sites. I'm going to use Who.is. I'm going to use my ethical hacking thought process, right? Again, the concept of footprinting is to gather information, right? Not just data, but gather information about the organization. So let me go up to my site. All right, so I'm at the Who.is, and we've seen this in other videos, but now let's really explore some additional information that we can garner here. We can see, we'll start with the location of Lakeland. It's in Kirtland. Now I know many of you, well, I go to Lakeland with, again, you have to go into the shoes of the pen tester, the ethical hacker, or even the unethical hacker. That's a little different subject. But here, the administrative contact is David Levine, Lakeland Community College. We have his phone number and we have an email address. Now let's dig in this a little bit. It's in Lake County, Ohio. There is some zip code information. That might be some information that we can use to maybe do some phishing or social engineering about the actual location and zip codes. But even down here, let's take a look at this. The email address appears to be first initial, last name. Okay. The domain name is lakelandcc.edu. I'm going to write that down and take a note that says it appears that the email address happens to be first initial, last name, and then the given domain name. I'll even look at the phone number. 440, the phone number is the area code. I can readily look that up, say what's the area code, and that should match Kirtland, Ohio. And then we have the exchange 525, and then finally just a particular given number. I'm going to write that down because maybe when I start investigating Lakeland, if things correspond, I'll let you guys know. All of Lakeland's phone numbers start with 525. All right. So I can do some phishing. I can do some social engineering. Maybe I can hijack the PBX, the phone system, because if it appears and I'm calling from a 440-525 number, these are all pen testing information gathering key points that I want to use. Now, we fall into a category. Do we not release that information? Do we release that information? Well, this information has to be released. This has to be part of the internet. But it gives us a stepping stone to investigate when we go and we investigate Lakeland. For example, there are websites out there to verify emails. Now, I'm using my own email here, and I'm doing that for a reason. One, it's my email. I know it's a true email. I've already checked it. That's no big deal. But I followed the same pattern. First initial, last name. David's email address should be valid, and I can do that. And maybe I just check one or two, maybe three or four, a couple email addresses following that pattern. And all I'm doing is saying, okay, I now know that Lakeland follows a consistent pattern of first initial, last name. Now, later on, I might discover additional patterns. For example, student email addresses or email addresses of employees that might have similar names. John Smith, they start appending a number to it. J Smith 1, J Smith 2, J Smith 3. But those are the things that I'm going to discover. Right now, all I've discovered is Lakeland follows a particular pattern of first initial, last name, maybe something else, domain name. Lakeland follows a pattern of, we can't verify this, but we'll verify this eventually. Lakeland follows a pattern of a 440 area code. The area code does seem to match with the Lake County area of Ohio's area code. We saw that with the address, and we write all this stuff down. Now, going back to the Who.is, there's some more information I can gather from Who.is. If you look up here, I'm going to run through this little diagnostic. And what this diagnostic tool is going to do is first going to ask me if I'm a robot. No, I'm not a robot. Okay, who's the motorcycle? That's hopefully I get all the motorcycles in one big swoop. Yes, I did. I always hate when there's just like a little piece and you're not quite sure. And what it's doing is it's pinging those addresses. In other courses, in this course, I will talk about the use of ping. When we talk about scanning, a lot of organizations, a lot of servers don't respond to the ICMP package of pings. This one happened. Oh, we have some information that we garnered here. Again, we have the IP address of 208.68.195.248, but you will notice that I have other servers that are also responding to that. It has to deal with, and how they respond is based on port, but you'll notice that we have a library.lakelandcc.environment. I write that down. A careers.lakelandcc.edu environment, a www3, an ISIS, a my portal. These are all different names, or I'll be a little old fashioned. These are all different servers that may be of interest, even though they have the same IP address. There's services on that particular given IP address. A lot of things working on the background, but that would be stuff that I would write down and document. If I look at the trace route, this is basically how I'm getting from point A to point B. A lot of granular detail and the time associated with all this. Nothing I really want to go into, because now we really start splitting some hairs. You'll hear me use this phrase in many of my videos. We have to suspend reality a little bit. The information that I gathered here may literally would take hours for me to decipher. Like, why is it taking so long? Is there a better approach? Are they doing some kind of governing of the amount of data going through? So right now all I'm doing is gathering information. I'm using my pen test mind to say, okay, this could be pertinent information down the road. Here I am just looking at the trace route and the milliseconds. That's something maybe I would have to investigate through programming languages, etc. The DNS record. This is pertinent information, again, for the pen tester. Now, none of this information we can just get rid of. It's not as I'm telling you, oh, this is dangerous information. No, this is information that has to be out there for people to use Lakeland's DNS structure, right? We have the start of authority value here. These values here have to deal with how this DNS server communicates with the authoritative DNS server through a process called time to live, and what happens when we update our side. We want the information to update on the non-authoritative servers, and that's what these values here represent. This value here appears is a date. That basically that would be September 13th. I believe 2023. I don't remember my DNS. I forget all this stuff, but I suspect that's when the DNS was last updated. Maybe there was a tweak in the DNS and it had to tell the non-authoritative servers, or it's not politically correct, but DNS still uses a concept called a master versus slave server, and the master holds the read-write record. Don't worry about that. Here's the IP address. These given servers, MX is the mailbox or the mail address. CNAME is common name. Again, that's a domain name. Some more MX. These are A's are your first records in the DNS server, actually a server address. So again, there are NS is the name server or the DNS server that manages this. So we actually have two name servers managing this. One is NS1 at ornet.net and the NS2 at ornet. You can see all this information. And again, by suspending reality for these videos, I take this information, I write it down, and I begin to analyze this information. And I'm looking for information that would allow me to gather more pertinent information that then I can potentially do some penetration there. None of this information is super secret. This is all publicly available information, but it is a launching point for more information that may not be secret, right? So DNS is normally our first jumping off point. We're trying to discover and touch that network. And in these past two videos, I basically went out and I found that publicly available information. Now, we could use this information, or we could use, not the information, we could use the techniques if somehow we're able to get behind the firewall and get into the into our victim's network. If I can get into the victim's network and I can get to their DNS server, I can start doing things called zone transfers. I know that's covered in textbooks and things like that. And what zone transfers are is give me all the IP addresses, give me all the information in my DNS server and all its zone and IP address and server names. Obviously, that is private information. That's not something we put on the public side. Basically, on the public side, we just say what the what the World Wide Web server is, the main contact. But on the private side, behind the firewall, oh, if you can get a zone transfer file, if you can get that DNS database, it's just a flat text file. That's going to give you a great deal of information. It is going to tell you the names of servers to their IP addresses, but that's behind the firewall, not in front. But we would use the exact same techniques. Right? Behind the firewall, we would do the exact same techniques, but we would begin to add additional techniques, asking for zone transfers and things like that. We can't do that on the public side. Public side DNS servers do not like doing zone transfers. The way they are set up, they don't send the information in a secure method, but the way they're set up is they don't allow anybody or anything to ask for a zone transfer. They have to really begin to negotiate, or prior to setting up the DNS server, they negotiate and say, you will only send a zone transfer from this DNS server to this DNS server. So on the public side, it's a little bit more secure. Now, there's ways that people have found to force things and fool things, but that is some serious hacking capabilities on the public side. Private side, maybe not so much, right? Public side, it's very, very difficult to do a zone transfer. The book kind of talks about that. There are some servers that they do set up that do allow you to practice and stuff like that. I've never done that. It's just something that I've done zone transfers on private networks, but not on public networks. But you can understand, if I can get that zone file, if I can get that information of server name to IP address, I got some pertinent information, right? So a little bit of introduction of footprinting with DNS. Let's go on and learn something.